Welcome back to the official Young Hunger podcast. This episode is all about the art of resilience. With our guest today, there is no better man for it. Introducing mindset and human performance coach, former international powerlifter, owner of Natural Resilience, and the co-founder of Fest NI. We are proud to introduce to you Mr. Ciaran May.
Hello, my name's Ciaran May and I'm the owner of Natural Resilience and the co-founder of Fest, and I teach people what I call the art of living.
Ciaran May, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Tell you what it is, I was sort of having a look through your stuff and I thought that is a man we must get speaking to, because the first time I ever came across you was the Think Network event.
Yes.
And it's then you were speaking. I didn't get speaking to you that day, but yesterday there was an event you had on the Rising Tide Network.
Rising Tide Network.
Tell me a wee bit about that for those who maybe don't know, because we were in the sea.
We were in the sea.
Yeah.
So the Rising Tide Network was an idea I had about 2.5 years ago, just coming out of COVID, and the thought process that the rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
So I most definitely believe in community over competition, and I knew that I had certain skills that I could give to the business world, and likewise there's questions I wanted to ask them.
Yeah.
So the concept is to get 25 business owners and what we call authentic networking. I don't really like the traditional networking of how big's your watch or how big's your car.
Yeah.
I've always kind of shied away from that. So this new concept of authentic networking is, the first rule is be yourself. So regardless of your CEO or whatever title it is, it's Michael or Ciaran.
Yeah.
And then the second concept is you ask, instead of what can I get out of this, what can I give? You know, and if everyone goes in with that mindset, then the rising tide lifts all ships. Yeah. So we touch on authentic networking and then bring 25 business owners into the sea, into the cold sea. And the concept is, the sea's a great leveler. So if you employ 1,000 people, or you're like me, a sole trader, well, once we go through that group suffering almost, you know, controlling your breath in the sea, then we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Which is great.
That's why someone was actually asking me, because we did that yesterday.
Did it yesterday morning.
And someone said to me after seeing that, because I put a wee post up, and they said, like, who's next in the podcast? I says, well, I was in the sea with them about 7 a.m. this morning with 25 others, and they were like, what? That's crazy. But it was like, it was mad, because whenever you get in, as you say, like, the cold takes you, and then you're talking to other people who are like on the same boat, essentially.
Yeah.
As you were saying, where did the sort of all that come from? Where did, like, if you think back, where did the Ciaran that we know now arise from?
I think it rose out of pain, probably, you know, and a bit of misunderstanding and feeling lost throughout life. Struggled with anxiety, was diagnosed with PTSD, and I felt lost, but I had a real yearning to try and deal with it or explore with it using holistic methods. And one of the things that I done was get into the cold sea, and that was the 21st of December, about 5 years ago. And I remember walking into the sea. I'd bust a blood vessel in my eye, powerlifting at the time, and somebody had said, get into the sea and get the salt water around it. So I went in strictly for like physical benefits, and when I walked in, probably for the first time in my adult life, I experienced silence. You know, the mind, that monkey mind, just shut up, it ceased to exist.
Yeah.
And I remember getting quite emotional, going like, fuck, what is this? Is this mindfulness? Is this meditation? I didn't know. But I went home and told my wife, and a week later, we went down again, the both of us with the kids. It was New Year's Day, and I did it for Cancer Focus. And then every day for a year, get in the sea. Yeah. A year of getting up early, you know, getting up at 5 a.m. or 5:30, but getting into the sea at sunrise. And it was just this kind of great explanation of life. Like, there's days it was raining and I was on my own. There was days the sun was out and I was with friends. There was days the waves were knocking me down and I had to get back up again. There was days the sea was very welcoming. Yeah. You know, it was just this great analogy of life, and I learned so much about myself throughout that year. Yeah. And I realised that I had went through adversity and I had went through tough times, but when I came out the end of it, it was almost like going from PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, to post-traumatic growth. Yeah. And I felt as if almost like an elastic band that I was pulled down, but because of the lessons learned and that strength in adversity, I was able to really propel. Mm-hmm. And so I then wanted to teach others that like that change, that uncomfortableness that happens in life is inevitable, but you can learn so much from it.
Yeah.
And if you don't give up during that process, then you can really spring forward and experience that growth.
How long have you been going, like doing the natural resilience? That's what you do.
Natural resilience has about 3 years now. And it started off outdoor workshops. It started off taking groups, members of the public, business owners, the Crawfordsburn Country Park, where we were yesterday, the Scout Centre.
Yeah.
But we would have did things like getting them up the abseiling tower, but blindfolding them and getting them to lean back. And it was all around kind of self-trust and communication skills.
Yeah.
Getting them into the water to control their breath. It was all about developing resilience and emotional intelligence. But then it's just evolved massively since then.
Because I've seen you've went up the mountains and you've done all this mad stuff to get people really out of their comfort zone.
Yeah, but it's just trying to bring people back to nature. For me, my greatest mentor has been nature. Like everything I have learned about human behaviour, I've learned from nature. You know, I used to think the world was quite chaotic, and I think a lot of people do between COVID, cost of living crisis, wars. The world can appear chaotic. And then I started spending a lot more time in nature, and I realised there's a very precise order to it. And there's these principles and laws that govern nature. But we, in a perverse way, think that we as human beings are exempt from nature and its laws. Yeah. Or in actual fact, we're part of nature. Yeah. And so when I started studying these laws in nature, like the law of growth, you know, everything within nature has to grow to its fullest potential. You know, the law of comparison, the oak tree doesn't compare itself to the pine tree, all these things. Well, what is happening here is happening within us. Yeah. And I started to try and live in harmony with them. You know, was
that something you sort of came across sort of naturally on your own, or was that something you sort of maybe heard from someone else and sort of grew that way? Or
a lot of it came from, I went and did a retreat called ayahuasca, which is like a plant medicine, and it changed a lot of how I viewed the world. And then you made a good point that did I have to do it on my own, and the answer was yes, because I think to observe all this and that understanding of yourself, it has to be done without any distractions. Yeah. So if I was to go to the forest with you and we were to cook over the fire, the conversation would be great and we would have a fantastic day, but that in itself is even a distraction. So for you to see how your own mind works and to see all the lessons in nature, I believe you have to almost do it in solitude. Yeah. You know?
I mean, that's what sort of got me whenever I was sort of watching your stuff. I was like, I just think that's fascinating, the whole mindset and the concept of what you're doing. What did you do before natural resilience?
So before natural resilience, I got into like what was called body work. I had a business called CM Sports Therapy, which was like sports psychology and working with the body. So it was like sports massage, acupuncture, dry needling. Before that, I was in the civil service, and it was all, and before that, building sites, and it was all like every chapter was necessary to understand the mind. I had to understand the body. Yeah. You know, to understand the body, I had to like know how systems worked and admin and so on and so forth. To understand that, I had to understand the concept of graft, which was where the building sites come into place. So it's almost like this beautiful domino effect, which has led to natural resilience.
What sort of made you take? You were saying there about the civil service. What sort of made you take that jump from? Is it 12 years you were in it for?
11 years.
11 years. What sort of made you? Was there something? Was there like a switch that made you think, you know what, I'm going to take a jump here and I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to make this a success. Or
I think it was just my natural progression through life. You know, I joined the civil service at 23. And then it was very appealing because it was a wage, it was a pension.
Security.
It was security. I've been with my wife since we're about 18. We got married at 25, 26. So then, you know, when you had kids straight away, so that was, and I think as a man, you're always deeply desiring to be the protector and the provider. And that's what that job provided me with. You know, I can provide for you, I can protect you. However, as the years went on, I realised, not that I was unhappy, but I also wasn't growing. I felt as if my growth as a human being was becoming massively stagnated, you know, because it can be quite, like, there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, and your potential and your enthusiasm and your imagination and creativity is almost quelled because you have to fit within a system. And I think a lot of like factories and companies are the same, you know, they want the individual that does what they're told and toes the party line and follows the rules.
Yeah.
Whereas I probably always had that like disruptive or rebellious or entrepreneurial streak in terms of I would rather push the boundaries and do something different.
Yeah.
So yes, about 4 years ago, 2019, I decided to resign.
Before COVID?
But just before COVID, with all these ideas. I also wanted to play, a big part of me deciding to go out my own was I wanted to contribute to society in a positive way. Like I wanted to, I don't mean it in an egotistical way, but I wanted to have a legacy. I wanted my kids to be proud of me. I wanted to just be of service. You know, I wanted to have my mark and my stamp in the world of like, I helped that person or...
Being part of their story nearly?
Yeah, just to do something like that. And it felt as if I couldn't do that in the civil service or a factory job. So there was a lot of fear. It was a lot of fear of me thinking, can I go? Like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to start a business. I don't know how to grow a business. I don't know how to pay taxes. I don't know, like a lack of knowledge. And then it was like, okay, have I got a strong enough purpose? Which I did. You know, I wanted to help people because I knew what it was like to feel as if you didn't have that help. And so again, like following that age-old adage, it was like, okay, I have a big enough why. I don't need to know all the hows at the minute.
Yeah.
I will just go for it. And everything started to just fall into place.
You were saying there about starting a business and like things maybe not going correctly. How did you sort of deal with that adversity and like many sort of losses? And is there anything you did to sort of help you?
Acceptance.
Yeah.
Acceptance. You know, I think what I am so grateful for now is I had been through a lot of tough and testing times throughout my life. You know, a lot of adversity, but it has shaped my character. And I feel as if I have resilience in abundance. Yeah. And so when, you know, I started my business and about less than 6 months later, we went into lockdown. Like loads of different setbacks, but I was just thinking, okay, what can I learn from this? Yeah. You know, how can I upskill? How can I learn a wee bit more about marketing? How can I delegate this to somebody else? How can I network or connect with somebody that can show me how they've done it? Yeah. So it was, as opposed to seeing things as a failure, I was seeing those many setbacks as feedback and massive lessons and also potential for opportunity and growth. Yeah,
you do a lot of work with like young, I seen you were going around like boxing clubs, sport clubs and things like that. I'm sure mental health's such a big thing, especially in like young men in Northern Ireland. And for there's such a high suicide rate, depression, anxiety, such a, I don't know a reason why or what it is for it, but what do you sort of feel like, how can someone help themselves for mental health reasons? What can they do to sort of, if they're in a dark place at the minute, or how can they better themselves as such?
I think it's a multifaceted answer. I don't think there's one thing that we can point to. I think there's a lot of like societal things that need to change. And the reason I got so passionate about working with young people, particularly young men, was a few years back, I was a young kid who was just a wonderful human being called Robbie Mateer. He was only 19 and took his own life. And at the time, I rented a room in XL Gym doing CM sports therapy, and he worked downstairs part-time as a PT. But he used to come up and do my head, and he was training to be a PT, and he was like, "What's this muscle called? What do you do this?" And he was just, his enthusiasm for life was intoxicating. You know, he had this big beaming smile, he had the world of his feet, he was a great footballer, worked 2 jobs. And I remember getting a phone call to say he's dead. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I remember going up to his house and seeing hundreds of kids outside crying and going in and seeing him in a coffin. And it hurt, you know, it was just disbelief. And I remember thinking, like, this is wrong. Yeah. It's because I think you make peace with, like, my grandfather died 2 years ago, I was very close with him. But I made peace with it because it was that cycle of life. You know, he was in his 80s, he had a phenomenal life. And it was his natural progression. But when there's this young fella who I'd only known for about a year, it just hurt, you know. And so at the time, I did acupuncture of the year for anxiety and stress and depression. And the week after his funeral, I put on a free event in Excel Gym and advertised it, you know, particularly for his friends and family. If anyone was struggling, come in and get this free acupuncture done. And about 150 people turned up. There was a busload of his friends came. And I remember thinking, right, something needs to be done. Something needs to be done. These young people, there's no, not some of them, quite a bit of them have no mature male role models in their life, you know, or some of them come from homes of emotionally unavailable fathers or alcoholism, you know, maybe toxic environments in school or sports, or live in tough areas. And so I started taking some of his friends after that for the cold sea swims. Or what we used to do as well is used to get them up, meet them at 5:30 in the morning at Wallace Park in Lisburn. We used to take our shoes off and run around the pitch 12 laps, which was a kilometre, in our bare feet in the snow and ice. And it was all about, you know, lads, when life gets hard, you can't hit the exit button.
Yeah.
You need to have resilience, you know, because I was trying to explain to them that, you know, this too shall pass. There's an impermanence about everything. Good times won't last forever. Hard times won't last forever. And I think you can maybe only see that as life goes on. You know, you have a wee bit of maturity and you think, okay, I'm going through a bit of a test in time here, but it won't last. Yeah. What can I do to ease it? And I think a lot of our young people, just through lack of experience or lack of knowledge, don't see that. Yeah. They identify with the pain. And so they say things such as, I am depressed or I am anxious. And it's maybe trying to teach them that you're experiencing that presently, but it doesn't define who you are, who you will be for the next 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah. Because speaking with a lot of young people that maybe attempt suicide, they see that it's the only way out, that they're going to live in this room of pain for the rest of their lives, and the only way out is to jump out through the window. Yeah. And it's trying to show them that, yes, the room is painful or very hot at the minute, but that temperature's going to subside, or that pain's going to subside, and you'll be able to go out the door, you know?
Yeah. I think everyone's been, even myself, and has been sort of, with suicide, everyone knows someone, so it's such a big thing, and I feel like what you're doing is amazing, going around and talking to these young ones, and that's one of the reasons why me and Ross wanted to speak to you, because we want to know why you're doing it and sort of behind it. I actually think the cold water, I was saying to Ross, my brother, and everyone at home, I feel like the cold water really helps, weirdly. It's like one of those things where you jump in and your mind just goes somewhere else, and suddenly the worries of the world, for those couple of minutes you're in, just fade away. Yeah,
it's fascinating. And I mean, I'm a bit of a geek in terms of the sports science and that of things, and what for me, one of the greatest things, you become fully present in the moment. You know, you're not worrying about work or family life, you're just concentrating on your breath. That's it. But what's happening is, as you go in, your body does go into a bit of a stress or shock response, and your breath becomes very fast and shallow up around the top half of your chest, which replicates anxiety. When you're anxious, you breathe up here. What we're doing in the water is, through breath work and through that cold exposure, is you're flicking the switch and you're taking control of the breath to breathe down here into the belly, which takes you out of that anxious state and into a relaxed state. Yeah. The whole concept is, if you can do that in the cold Irish Sea, you can become comfortable in the uncomfortable. Then you can do it in work, at home, anywhere. Yeah. And there's a ripple effect of that. It's like the father that comes home to work stressed. Well, he's going to be moody to his wife and kids. He's going to be ignorant or arrogant. He's going to be stressed. He's maybe going to hit the drink. But if you can teach him to leave his stress in the sea just by controlling his mind and his breath, then everyone benefits.
And you were saying earlier about the powerlifting. You were an international powerlifter.
So I represented Northern Ireland. I powerlifted for about 5 years, and I represented Northern Ireland 2018, 2019. How'd
you find that, or how'd you sort of...
Loved it. Yeah. Absolutely loved it. I did, when I was younger, I did different sports. I played Gaelic, I ran. I was always sporty, I was always athletic. Later teenage years, drinking, that kind of sport went to the wayside. Yeah. Did a wee bit of boxing, had a couple of amateur fights. I've always loved boxing. And then when my son was born, he's 10 now, I decided to start to get into a wee bit of training, just lifting weights, because I could do it on my time, as opposed to somebody saying, oh, you need to be here for 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I trained in a gym and I seen these guys powerlifting, and to me they just looked cool. Like they were lifting phenomenal weights. They weren't posy. They weren't, they were just these almost like lone wolf type characters. And I remember asking them one Saturday, could I train with you? Yeah. And deadlifting for the first time, and loved it. Mm-hmm. And so I joined the powerlifting club in Ballynahinch. And very, very lucky. The people I trained with became great friends, but they were also probably the best people in Northern Ireland in terms of powerlifting. Everyone within that, it's like a private club, everyone within it, apart from me, was on the Northern Ireland team. And so I was the weakest in the room, and I learned so much from them. And so I progressed quicker than most people because I had a group of experts to train with.
Yeah. Do you think that's a big thing, being in a room of people that, number one, you admire, and being nearly, as you say, like have people who are like nearly better, above you?
I think if you want to grow, it's probably one of the most important things you should do is to put yourself in environments where you're not the strongest, smartest, quickest. Like, you will learn so much, and it's probably like you learning from the people you interview in this podcast. That was one of the big concepts with the Rising Tide Network, was I want to be the weakest in the room. I want to replicate that growth from the powerlifting room into the business room. Mm-hmm. I want to be with experts. I want to ask the guy that's made all the mistakes and now has a multi-million-pound company, like, how did you do that? What was the next step? Like, what's your mindset? Like, how did you overcome that adversity? Yeah. And so
that's what I find, because you were sort of running me through who was there, and like, these guys are hugely, hugely successful. Massive. And you wouldn't even, talking to them, you wouldn't know. If you know what I mean, like, you wouldn't know, like, they weren't big-headed, or they were just like normal guys wanting to know more.
And I'll be honest, I used to put these people on pedestals. Yeah. I was like, well, this person owns a multi-million-pound company, so successful. What I realised was that the same with athletes I've worked with, they are no different from me or you or from us and the addict that's struggling in a flat round the corner. The success of people comes down to consistently making better choices on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. But regardless of that, they still have their own stresses and struggles, and that's why they're there exploring the sea. Yeah. When you had your conversations yesterday with people, who were like, I needed this. Yeah. I've been so busy, I needed just to relax and unwind. But the big word that you heard yesterday was the energy in the room. The energy in the room. There's something, like, people in that room aren't talking about cost of living, or they're not talking about, Philip Schofield, they're not talking about sports, they're talking about, like, they're having positive, open, conscious conversations. Yeah. No ego, no bullshit, and it's refreshing. I come away from them buzzing for days. Yeah. I'm just like,
I was going to say, like, even seeing that, like, you built that, and all these people have come into one room who have the same mindset, and you're nearly the one reason for why they're there. How's that feel? Is that not...
I struggle with it sometimes. Like, people say, thank you so much for bringing us together. I go, I don't know. I struggle with it. There's part of it as a selfish reason. It's my selfishness of I want to be around these people. I want to bring them together. Like, I want to learn from them. Yeah. But then when people come back to me and say, well, I benefited from this day because, me and Michael then went and collaborated with something, or I spoke with somebody and there was like a joint connection there, and I was able to progress from that. So thank you. Yeah. I feel humbled to the point of a wee bit embarrassed.
Oh, really?
Just like,
I would never have thought that. I would have said, like, more like, you must be proud. Yeah.
I'm immensely proud, and like, I do feel very, very blessed. But there's part of it, if I'm honest, there's part of me feels like life has become this. Like, the life I'm living now was almost my dream 5 years ago, and I feel as if I'm living my dream. Yeah. And there's a wee bit of a fear of, what if I wake up and it was just a dream? Do you know what I mean? And there's
pinch yourself moment nearly.
All those guys yesterday, and even spending time with you and that yesterday, it's like this is a Friday morning, and I'm having breakfast with 25 great people listening to like a world-class keynote talk. Yeah. And like, I've created this. This is like a I feel so blessed, you know.
The Rising Tide Network, you also do the Happy Fest.
Happy Fest.
That's happening this year?
That's happening 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks. Hopefully by the time this comes out,
Yeah.
it should be going.
It's the 1st and 2nd of July.
And what's happening in it? What sort of, if someone doesn't know what Happy Fest is or want to know more, what is it? What is it?
Happy Fest was an idea of Ciaran and I. So Ciaran is my business partner for Happy Fest. We had both been through journeys of life and realised that what helped us grow as individuals was kind of community, connection, meeting good people, and using modalities that probably seem a bit hippie or airy-fairy or alternative, but in actual fact, when you study them, it's been used for thousands of years. So like yoga, breathwork, meditation, getting in the sea, spending time with good people, good food, not drinking. Yeah. And so we decided to like showcase all these people that have helped us last year, and we put on an event called Happy Fest. It was alcohol free. It was speakers at a fire pit, singers, songwriters, dancers. You could come and do yoga, breath work, all these modalities, and 1,000 people turned up.
Yeah, where is it, did you say?
Crawfordsburn. Where we were yesterday. And so it was meant to be a one-off, and I thought, well, it can't be a one-off. There's a need for this, and there's a desire within us to give, you know, to kind of host this event. So
last year was one day, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and this year's two.
2.
Yeah, what was it sort of? Did you feel the need, like, you know, this was a success, and you need to do?
We know it's like there's a big part of me that knows that it's going to get too big for us. Yeah. You know, for just 2 people. We'll have took on an events manager this year who's phenomenal, but there's an exciting part that this is going to go on beyond what we ever imagined. It's going to be a huge showcase where thousands upon thousands of people will turn up and benefit from it. And that's at the stage where we will have to check in with our ego and say, okay, we need to stand back and hand it over to the professionals, because it's not about us. Yeah. It will never be about us. It's never, ever really been about us. It's about an underlying message of suicide and mental health. Suicide is never the answer, and mental health or mental well-being can be helped and it can be progressed, and here's a lot of people that can help you, and here's a lot of modalities that can help you.
Yeah, and that's the 1st, did you say, of July?
1st and 2nd this year.
Me and Ross will make sure we go.
Yes, you're more than welcome. Yeah,
I appreciate that. There's one thing I was going to say to you here, and I really want to sort of pick your brain, but what's your sort of top 3 skills to become a hugely successful entrepreneur, would you say?
Resilience is one of them, and that sounds a bit cliche with natural resilience, but resilience we've always put into that like advancing despite adversity, and a lot of people think it's just that grit and determination and getting on with things, but it's also like acceptance. Yeah. You know, resilience is, okay, I'm going through a tough period, and it's also, you know, it's absolutely necessary to realise that life isn't always in a flow state. I think creativity is another one. You know, we live in a day and age where the education system, I think, is vitally important. My sister's a teacher, but I think some systems within education, you're told what to think and not how to think, where I think we need to celebrate creativity and people thinking outside of the box, because I think thinking outside of the box gives birth to ideas, and it's ideas that change the world. And the third one would probably, for me, is connection. You can only go so far on your own. You know, irregardless of your skill set, irregardless of your drive or ambition, you will reach a plateau on your own, and it's at that point you need to start connecting with people that have got further up the mountain to you, and people that see things from a different perspective. And that can be hard for people because they're so invested in their business or their company, and they think this is all me. Yeah. But the day and hour I was like, okay, I need a PA, I need somebody to do that. I need to hire somebody that can look at my business from a different viewpoint. I need to stand back from certain aspects. I need to, you know, ask for help. Yeah. Then that's the day
a tough one.
Yeah.
Your keynote yesterday was saying about asking for help. Most people are happy to give it, but I feel like that resonated with me, because I was like, for me, it's a hard thing to do, to reach out, because you nearly feel like not a failure, but or like a defeat, but like you really want to be like, I want to do it on my own.
Yeah. Well, I
it doesn't
think
work.
for me, Michael, like I probably went into, I had only heard of LinkedIn for 2 years ago. And it was a girl that helped me start Natural Resilience called Kate Conway, who does the sea swimming with me.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, you need to get LinkedIn. I was like, what's LinkedIn? I'd never heard of it. She was like, you're a tech idiot. So set me up a LinkedIn, get on it. And I remember being really overwhelmed by all these people in suits and dresses and all the very corporate wording.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, that's not me. Like I'm 6'3", I'm covered in tattoos and scars. And I was like, well, I remember at the very first day of LinkedIn was, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be authentic. And I made some great connections. And I've got so much help from the business community. People probably look at it in the forms of, oh, it's just competition. But I think the business community, particularly within Northern Ireland, are so helpful. And if you find the right people, not only do they want to help you, but they really want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
And I've been really, really blessed to meet people that, you know, they don't see it as helping me. They see it as almost giving you advice because somebody gave me advice.
Yeah.
You know, I want to show you what mistakes worked for me because I don't want you going through this, or...
You're passing on the knowledge, really, aren't it?
Yeah. You know, and I do it now, you know, to my limited knowledge. You know, if people say, oh, I'm struggling to do this, let's come in for a free session and I'll try and help you or I'll introduce you to this person.
Yeah.
And it's almost that ripple effect.
Yeah. It's nice to sort of get in the same wavelength as some people because, like, as you say, they've probably had the same trials and tribulations as like yourself, and it's sort of nice that way. See, when you're a man who've went out in your own business and you've done all that, how do you find the balance? You have a young family too. How do you sort of find the balance between family time and work time?
It's something I consciously have to give energy to on a constant basis. Like Thursday night, I had a panic attack. First time I've had a panic attack in about 5 years. Woke up in the middle of the night and I went downstairs and lay in the settee, stripped off. I was sweating and shaking. And it was just stress and the busyness of Happy Fest coming up, Natural Resilience being busy, 2 young kids, life.
So much going on.
So much going on. So it's something I still have to give conscious effort to. Balance is a big thing. Does it exist? You know, or are we in a constant state of balancing? So that panic attack for me was an indication that I was out of balance. Yeah. And so I'm off this weekend. I'm taking off the month of July. You know, so it's just about having that foresight. There's no shying away that this past few weeks for me was always going to go be busy with the run up to Happy Fest, trying to take wee mini breaks in between that. Yeah. And I always say to people with balance, or the art of balancing, is using the spider web analogy. The spider web for me represents life. So each segment of that is like business, family, personal growth, health, finances, all those things. Now, last week, my spider spent too much in business, you know, too much organising Happy Fest. And the bit that the spider goes into the most, it's giving off silk. So if you spend a lot of time in the gym, your health segment of the spider's web will be stronger. Yeah. Same as business, same as hobbies, same as personal growth. But what happens is that, like, the law of opposites, or the law of polarity, is that when this is strong, not that this is weak, but it just needs a bit of attention, it needs a bit of intention and a bit of focus. And so for me, it's trying to maintain that awareness of, okay, I'm feeling a wee bit burnt out here, I need to move the spider into rest. Yeah. Or I need to spend quality time with my kids. Or in actual fact, I need to push my business a wee bit this week. You know, so
I think it's nice the way you bring the kids and stuff into the sea, and you bring them to nature and the campfires. Because I've seen that, and I was like, wow, like not many people do that really. You know, for their younger generation, because you're starting them really, and they're just not young. Yeah,
but my whole, I suppose, drive for success is, well, it's self-actualization, probably from an egotistical point of view. I want to explore my potential. You know, I want to explore my potential, but I also want to give, like unconsciously give my son and daughter permission to explore their potential also. You know, I want to break the mold so they can absolutely smash it. Yeah. And like, I meditate with my son, I do visualization with them, I take my son and daughter up into the forest and we cook over the fire. They get in the sea. My talks, they come to. Yeah. You know, they come to my talks, they do their wee gratitude pieces.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It's incredible, but I want to normalise that for them. And it's the same with Happy Fest. You know, I want people to bring their kids and go, well, like, performing well through life and well-being and optimal kind of living is normal. You know, I want my kids to see me doing breathwork on the beach, you're getting into the sea, as opposed to a lot of kids are brought up and they're in a bar, or they're seeing their parents maybe arguing, or they're seeing their parents struggling, and that's their normal.
Yeah, become accustomed nearly to it.
So I want my kids' normality to be this.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talk to so many young and old, successful individuals. Do you see like a common trait or anything that keeps popping up and you sort of think, wow, like he does that, she does that? There's something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what my role is. Like, my job is human behaviour and human performance.
Yeah. And
so you have to study success, but that's part of it. To understand the full paradigm of human behaviour, you have to study successful people and unsuccessful people, people that are struggling with whatever it may be. Yeah. But studying success, I mean, there's a blueprint. Yeah. There's definitely a blueprint. There's that, persistence. There's, they've all got a strong mindset. And that sounds quite cliche, but they've certain mental attributes of being creative, of connecting with other people, of courage. Yeah. All successful people take courageous risks, whereas a lot of unsuccessful people are maybe consumed by fear. Mm-hmm. They're in terms of their mindset, they know that they have a better control over their thoughts, feelings, and actions, or whether they consciously are aware of it or not. But yeah, there's always this common element, and the more successful the person, the more, I suppose, it becomes clearer. Yeah. That they have these certain attributes.
That's what we sort of found, I think, me and Ross, definitely, that even with like yourself, I'm sort of seeing similarities between other people we've done. I think that's absolutely amazing, nearly, to see that. If someone's looking, maybe someone's maybe lost and doing their sort of 9 to 5 or doing a job, because you've been there, and they want to follow their passion, what advice would you give them?
I think one of the first things is to step back. I always say to people, like, the more reflective you are, the more effective you are. Like, go and reflect on who you are. Like, what is your purpose in life? The thing is, like, some people are extremely happy in their 9 to 5 job. It's all they wished for. It's all they wanted to do. And if that's the case, then stay in it and keep growing there. But if you are in a 9 to 5 job and you're thinking, I'm not necessarily happy here, and I maybe do want to start up my own business, get really clear on your purpose, like your reason why, and have that big why and cultivate it, and ruminate on it and meditate on it. Because when you have the big enough why, you have that passion to make the courageous moves. But then also follow your passion too. Yeah. And the two are kind of intricately linked. Like, what sets your soul on fire? If you're working a 9 to 5 job in computer technology, and you're doing it for the sake of doing it, but on the weekend you do whatever it may be, and it sets your soul on fire, then see if you can do something with that. Yeah. For me, it was getting out into nature, and I remember thinking, I can't monetize the sea or the mountains, or walk and talk sessions with business owners out in nature, because nature's free. Like, how can I monetize that? Because this is the thing, you have to follow your heart, but you also have to think things through. You have to marry the brain with the heart. And so I had to ask those questions of, I've got a mortgage and I've 2 kids and a wife, like, I need to make a wage. Yeah. I was like, well, what's my passion? What's my purpose? It's helping people and it's spending time in nature. Well, how can I make that into a business model? And realistically, there's no limits to it. Yeah. There's no limits to what you do. So my big thing was, okay, I can't charge people for getting them into the sea, but what if I rent out a venue close to the sea and give them their breakfast and provide a guest speaker? Yeah. Well, then I can. Yeah. Because I asked my ones, I haven't shut up about it since yesterday. I've been talking about it ever since, and the people and the connections you make, and I think that's probably the best bit about it, nearly, at the end of the day. It becomes exciting. Life then becomes exciting. Yeah. And I think if you start to visualize the person that you could be, if you were to take the courageous moves and follow your heart whilst thinking things through, and then you start to get really excited about that version of yourself, and the excitement builds and builds to the point where it acts as a catalyst to take the next step. You touched on visualization there, and is that something you do often? Like The Secret, is that something you sort of touch base with, or maybe not? I read The Secret. I was given the book The Secret when I first came out years ago, and I remember reading it going, you can think things into existence. So I was like, I want to be a millionaire, I want to be a millionaire. But I want to win the lotto, but I didn't buy a lottery ticket. Yeah. I'm huge into self-development books, huge into I actually don't think the secret is a great one. You know, I think it's quite superficial. I think there's much better ones than that.
What would you recommend? What other books would you sort of be like?
So, off the top of my head, there's a great book by Neville Goddard called The Power of Awareness. Anything by Neville Goddard. So he talks about the kind of the science behind the law of attraction, you know, about intention, about the power of assumption. So it's like visualizing this version of you and then assuming that you are it now.
Yeah.
And what that means is, for me, is if you want to be a successful business owner, what does it look like? How does it? You'll start acting like that in the present moment.
Yeah.
But when we say acting, it just means taking actions that that person would take. And then you start to become that person.
Would you still do that to this day? Would you?
I visualize. I wouldn't say every day. You know, most days, probably 5 days a week. Like, as in, I have a song that I use called Hans Zimmer Time. It's a So, and from inception, which is quite emotive. And I'll maybe read my goals, like maybe scan over them. I'll put my earpods in and I'll either be in the forest or I'll lie on top of my bed and I will visualize those goals having already been completed. And because the song's quite emotive, I do feel emotional in terms of, I know I want this. This makes me feel excited. This makes me want to discard the things that are stopping me from doing that now.
Yeah.
And I feel as if it works because if you visualize for 5 minutes a day, it's constantly reminding you of what you're capable of and what you want and desire, you know?
Yeah.
I think any athlete I've worked with visualizes. People think, oh, it's airy-fairy. Visualization's using your imagination. That's all it is. It's just using your imagination and those higher faculties. Most people go through their life just using their memory. The memory's like predictive text. It's like, oh, this is what I'm used to. This is what I'm familiar with. But the imagination kind of transcends that. And it's like, this is what I would be capable with if there was no limits. Yeah. You know, business owners call it forecasting. Some people call it manifesting. Athletes use the term visualization, but it works. Yeah. It absolutely works. And you ask an Olympic athlete 4 years before they put a gold medal around their neck, they will have visualized it every day, what it feels like standing on the podium, feeling that pride. And the trick for me is, first and foremost, seeing it, but then feeling it. You know, because then your whole subconscious, every cell in your body starts to feel that, and then you start to desire it and start taking actions in alignment with it. How
did you learn that? Like, I hear you talking about being a mentor to people. Who's your mentor? Do you have a mentor?
Yes, I've had several throughout the years. You know, one on an official capacity and unofficial, and you know, some of those guys yesterday have taken me out for kind of conversations to say, I would advise you to learn this or speak with this person. I've also paid for mentorships and I've done different courses. For me, it just, in school, I knew my father was very much a grafter. He worked on building sites. My mother was a lot gentler and was big into like reading books in the evening and stuff. And I knew, I always struggled with numbers. I had to repeat maths. I still to this day struggle with numbers. But I've always loved reading. I've always loved reading books. However, in school, I got expelled.
Did you?
Yeah, because they were giving me books that I had no interest in. You know, I just didn't feel the necessity to play 3 blank mice on a recorder or to learn about the Battle of Hastings or to do this. Whereas now with the self-development stuff, there's something stirs within me. It's like, oh, tell me more. Like this, when we talk about, you hear the expression, oh, go with what resonates with you. Bioresonance is a feeling when you feel the information. Yeah. So when I'm reading this, I feel something within me going, I know this stuff. Like this is resonating. This is reminding me. I want to know more. I want to know more. Yeah.
Like that from day one, nearly?
No, I would say probably mid-20s.
So what was the shift? What was the sort of?
Probably kids coming along, Michael. You know, because before that, I didn't really have much responsibilities. You know, I rented a place with my wife or my fiance then. But life then, it was quite simple. It was great. It was enjoyable. You know, we used to go on our wee holidays and we went out nights drinking. And then kids came along and you are responsible for little human beings, you know, and then you're trying to make heads or tails of the world. And you go from having no responsibility to having a lot, you know, mortgages, children, marriage to kind of cultivate. Yeah. And that responsibility can be overbearing at times. So there was that, and then coming into powerlifting, it was like, okay, how do I balance all this while still progressing, still like searching for excellence? Yeah. And so I started getting into like Bob Proctor, Tony Robbins, Carl Jung, the great psychologist, and started teetering around the edges of that. And what they were saying, it resonated.
Yeah.
And I was like, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And so as much as I coach and mentor people, I still very much see myself of a student. And I've resigned myself to the fact that I will be a student of life for the rest of my life, you know.
Do you ever go to the events, the Bob Proctor events?
Yeah, I was at Inception last year. That's Kim Calvert.
Yes. Yeah. She was on your podcast actually, wasn't she? Yeah.
Phenomenal mindset. Again, speaking to her mindset is incredible.
Yeah.
You know, so when I spoke to her, I was like, her success is like, this is why.
Yeah.
You know,
a trait nearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal. But yeah, that's a night out to me.
Yeah.
You know, I've signed up to a couple of Wim Hof, for example, is coming to Dublin in January. There's a big event I'm going to in November. I'll probably go to Inception again this year. So as opposed to spending money on drink or crap, you know, I would rather invest in myself by going to these events and learning. Because every day is a school day. Yeah. And for me, these events are almost like going to university for the day. It's wow, this.
Yeah, it's amazing hearing that mindset. I tell you what, we're down to our last couple of questions. Yeah. But if someone, a young man or woman, is watching this and looking at you, what advice would you have for them if they're looking to follow in the likes of your own footsteps?
Don't be pigeonholing yourself. You know, I think it's easy to look at somebody and go, oh, they're successful. That's okay for them. Like my mum and dad separated when I was 15. We grew up in a housing estate, 4 kids, struggled financially, got expelled from school, suffered from mental health, had breakdowns. You know, there's no, you don't have to be from a certain area or to have a certain education. Like I left school at GCSEs. You don't need to have all this to do this, you know, just be yourself, get to know who you are, you know, get to know the self and then be yourself and express it authentically. And there's no such thing as self-development. From a psychology point of view, the self is the soul or the spirit, and that's limitless, that's your potential. And so you can't develop perfection, you can just express it. But what we tend to do is we listen to like society or parents or school teachers that say, you're not good enough, you can't do this. And so we start to tell ourselves those stories, which become beliefs. That's why we call it self-limiting beliefs. We limit the perfection. And so it's get to know the self. Yeah. And when you know the self within you, start to express it.
Brilliant stuff. If there's any big events you were saying about Happy Fest, and where can people find that on the socials and yourself?
Happy Fest is Happy Fest NI on Instagram. Website as well as Happy Fest. And then for myself, Natural Resilience on social media or Ciaran May on LinkedIn.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much, Ciaran, for coming on and for your time. I hope you guys have learned something from Ciaran, hearing him talk today. My name has been Michael Burgess. This has been the official Young Hunger podcast, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.